America is a large country, and this summer we plan to cross the whole thing by rail. Through music, history, and caloric food, we experience the different regions and cultures that all add up to one country. We really didn't know what to expect riding trains for this much. Maybe we proved the haters wrong, or maybe we prove them right. And so it begins, the Great American Train Tour of 2023. We started in Washington, D.C. It was a convenient place to meet, but it also seemed fitting to start our American train journey in the nation's capital itself. We'd work our way westward, following the path of history. We boarded at the beautiful Union Station in D.C., our first stop on a long journey. It was here that our electric engine was switched out with a diesel, which meant that we had left the Northeast Corridor behind and were entering the South. Word on the street is we're going to Atlanta. Our hotel for the night. Alright, meal number one, circa Manassas, Virginia. Let's get it. It's officially quiet time on the car, on the train. We're all, it's night. See you in the morning. We slept through Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and woke up amongst the green trees of Georgia. We got a tree on the track, and we've been sitting somewhere in Georgia for about an hour. We may never make it. And for whatever reason, I didn't manage to take many videos in Atlanta, but we had a great time nonetheless. Saw the beautiful Piedmont Park, the vibrant Midtown District, the Dr. King Memorial, and other quirky sights that made the city unique. Some questionable cuisine, but otherwise a very nice time. We're heading to New Orleans. We got 12 hours on a train ahead of us. Soon it was time to leave Atlanta and really get into the deep South. Hours on a train later, we're in New Orleans.
New Orleans!
First stop, of course, was Bourbon Street. I'm not entirely sure how we had the energy, but pretty soon we were exhausted, moved on. The vibes just a block off of Bourbon Street could not have been more different. We went from daiquiris and hand grenades to gas lamps and quiet. Well, after our rager of a night, we started our next day bright and early at the French Market. A huge bazaar for food vendors, artists, crafts, everything you can imagine. Next, of course, was the riverboat. We're on the Creole Queen riverboat. It's about 112 degrees in the shade. It's too hot. This is hot. We were treated to a historical account of the city of New Orleans by the one and only Charlie Chestnut, historian and riverboat guide, taking us to the scene of the Battle of New Orleans and along the Mississippi River. Afterwards, we headed to the historic Frenchmen Street, caught some great live music. The Garden District is New Orleans' Beverly Hills, with homes belonging to important established families. Needless to say, the rent here is pretty high. Well, I'll say New Orleans did not disappoint. There's something about eating crawfish etouffee in 100-degree humidity that really makes you feel alive. From the great music to delicious food to the kind people, mix of French, Spanish, Caribbean, American, it really makes it its own unique entity. You really have to experience it to understand. The next day was 8 hours through the Louisiana swamps up into Mississippi. Personally, I thought the swamps were the coolest part, scenery-wise, of the whole trip. I've never seen anything like it. It was also cool to see Mississippi, where a lot of my favorite blues artists like Arlo Burnside and Junior Kimbrough came from. We arrived in Memphis, and of course the first thing we did was bike to Arkansas. I mean, why not? It's right there, and who knows when the next time we'll get a chance to go to Arkansas is. We also saw this honestly overly cool model of the Mississippi River. Caught a live performance from Stax Recording Academy. Saw the Memphis Redbirds for my first minor league baseball game. And of course found ourselves at Biker Wednesday, weekly biker meetup. We fit right in. It's our last night in Memphis.
Yo, Memphis Nights.
We've eaten more meat in the last 2 days than our whole lives combined. It's the hottest I've ever felt in my life, temperature-wise. We're heading back north to the land of salads, hopefully. I think Memphis really took us both by surprise. First off, we had some of the best food we've ever had in our lives. I think we each gained about 50 pounds. But as music lovers, this really was the place to be. This is where a lot of it began and has continued today. And we managed to see some historic sites and meet some friendly folks along the way. After a long night on the train, we're in the north. Now, I think it's pretty unfair that a beautiful city like Chicago has a beach, and a fresh water one at that. And you can't beat it. I don't think it should be allowed. We've waited many moons for the Chicago deep dish pizza. I think we will not be disappointed. In Chicago, our goal was to just neighborhood hop, see everyday life in a city that has a real summer. Got to relive my glory days in Wrigleyville. We also experienced the other Chicago summer. Find ourselves in a monsoon at the Brown Line station in downtown Chicago. Another Chicago perk is all the free music festivals they have. We got to see Built to Spill, our favorite one-hit wonder. Next, of course, was the famous Riverwalk. As if the city wasn't cool enough already. Our food bill was getting a little high, so we did some fishing. We're bestowed the distinct honor of traveling on Midwest trip cars. Let's see if they're as cool from the inside. We went through Illinois, which outside of Chicago pretty much consists of a town called Lincoln, and then 6 hours of cornfields. At least there was a nice sunset. Upon arriving in St. Louis, we checked out the Gateway Arch, which is a great way to combat my claustrophobia and fear of heights all at the same time, as well as my fear of spending money. I'd always kind of known the arch existed, never thought too much of it, but being there in person, especially as a civil engineer, was really something. Here at the National Transportation Museum in St. Louis, which is a huge parking lot from the golden age of rail, as you can see behind me. Let's go check it out.
San Francisco.
Now, if you're any kind of train fan, this place is like the promised land. Basically, when all the old railroads went under, they let them donate their equipment here as a tax break. So you have everything from pristine locomotives to decaying wrecks. Commended the St. Louis Metro for operating on the honor system. The time had arrived to cross Missouri into Kansas City, which, fun fact, is not in Kansas. I would argue it has one of the nicest stations we'd seen the whole trip. Probably the nicest, to be quite honest. We stayed at the 1812 Overture Bed and Breakfast, which is pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a place called the 1812 Overture Bed and Breakfast. It kind of resembled some grandma's attic, but it was very comfortable, hosts were very friendly, and they made a mean breakfast. Our first day in Kansas City, so far, exceeded expectations. I don't really know what expectations we had, but they've been exceeded. Now, Kansas City was a really nice town, but no one told us that it's closed on Wednesdays. Like everything, from the city market to all the shops, restaurants, and museums, and just Wednesdays, for whatever reason. I'm excited to come back on a Thursday. One highlight that was open was the World War I Memorial, with the panoramic viewing tower. No trip to Kansas City is complete without a stop at Arthur Bryant's Barbecue, home of the burnt end sandwich, a real vegetarian favorite. Also worth a trip was the Negro League Baseball Museum, and some Kansas City street art. We also found our new favorite Barstool game, potential new career. We only booked one night in Kansas City, but we could have easily stayed more and had a good time. But alas, it was time to head west. Now this was about to be the longest day of the trip. We took an overnight to Trinidad, Colorado, where we catch a Greyhound bus up to Denver. Not just any Greyhound bus, one full of screaming kids. Trinidad is a small town on Colorado's southern border with a mining history. The visitor center was extremely welcoming and even gave us a free ride 3 miles out of town to our Greyhound bus stop. We've made it to the Mile High City, and goddamn, I never thought I'd miss dry heat this much. Coors Field, home of the last place, Colorado Rockies. Truthfully, we had zero plan for Denver. We started off at the Denver Museum, so we at least knew a little bit about where we were. We stumbled onto the Santa Fe Arts District in their first Friday street event, which is basically where every 20 to 30-year-old person in Denver comes to show off their bad tattoos. Finally found a laundry room. It's like an oasis in the desert. The day we've all been waiting for, the California Zephyr across the Rockies. Time to see something that isn't corn. Put me in, coach. Look, Amish.
expecting too much of a temperature variation. Now, when it gets too cold, when it goes from...
So apparently when the tracks get too cold, the train has to go slow. So we did a good 5 miles an hour for about 2 hours. This seems like a design flaw, seeing as how these are in the Rocky Mountains, but whatever, not my place. Despite being painfully slow, the ride was really gorgeous. We also figured it was the right time to treat ourselves to our first Amtrak meal in the dining car. We find ourselves in the least frequented station in all of Utah, which is itself one of the least frequented states in all of the world. Helper, Utah. Since we've been doing mostly big cities on this trip, we wanted to do one small town, and boy did we get it. This is the Helper Museum, which is about as big as the town itself. We learned the history of Helper's importance as a railroad hub, mining town, and an outlaw hideaway. This used to be the place where the Helper engines would connect to the trains and help them power over the mountain. But now it's just a huge Union Pacific logistics yard. Well, Utah was just a little too lush and green, so we decided to head to Nevada. Reno's an interesting place. It's another one of these cities that probably shouldn't exist, just in the middle of the desert. But we decided to strike it rich gambling and be on our merry way. The final leg, a mere 6 hours late. Pretty good, honestly. Going to California. The part we'd all been waiting for. Time to go over the Sierra Nevada mountains on the iconic Donner Pass route. We hadn't seen a tree in about 4 days, so it was a welcome change. The scenery was amazing, and to think that these routes were created in the 1860s, blasting through tunnels, traversing ravines, weaving around mountains, is really mind-blowing. We did get to see the culprit for our delays, the replacing of the wooden ties. But eventually we weaved our ways through the foothill towns like Colfax and watched the sun go down as we entered the Central Valley and pulled into Sacramento. We're in California. Sacramento. We've been on the train for about 8 years. At this point, we left Reno last Thursday. We're finally in somewhere, I don't know, whatever. I can't really put into words just how tired we were at this point in the journey, but we were so close. Ladies and gentlemen, we made it. We're alive. We're not riding Amtrak for a long time. And we made it to the Bay Area. It felt great to feel weather under 70 degrees again. Well, there you have it. We're back in San Francisco. It's 50 degrees and foggy, just the way we like it. And what a trip it's been. 3 weeks all across the country. We've seen sights, we've had delicious food, we've met wonderful people, listened to music, learned some history, and had a great time doing it. I hope you've enjoyed watching our documentation of this trip, and hopefully someday you'll be inspired to do one of your own. My name is Marcus. It's been great. I'll see you guys in the next one.